Hey guys, it's Vas here from Aussie RC Playground and welcome to my review of the Magic E6III HX. This is a 1/8 scale 4-wheel drive brushless monster truck that comes equipped with a Toro 2500 kV brushless motor, a waterproof 100 amp ESC, which I believe is a rebranded Hobbywing, and a Savox metal geared servo, which is also waterproof. The truck is equipped with aluminium shock towers front and rear, which are supporting huge plastic bodied shocks. Toe angle can be adjusted by some adjustable toy rods in front and rear of the truck, and camber is adjustable by the pillow bowl suspension provided. There's also a wheelie bar mounted at the rear of the truck, LEDs mounted in the front bumper, and the truck is limited to 4S only. Alright, so let's kick off this review with the electrics. Now for the electrics on this truck, I gave it a 3 out of 5, and there's a couple of reasons why I did that. One of them being its top speed. This truck tops out straight out of the box at about 48 kilometers an hour, which is about 30 miles an hour for those of you using the Imperial system. So it's not a very quick truck running on 4S straight out of the box, especially something that looks as good as this. I mean, this truck does look pretty fast, but when you pull the trigger, it's a little bit underwhelming. So I did end up gearing it up in the end. I went for a 45 tooth spur, stock is 47, and I went for an 18 tooth pinion, and the stock pinion I believe is a 13 tooth. So quite a big change in the gearing, and the stock electrics, which are these ones that I have here in my hand, they can handle it. I did try a 19 tooth pinion with the 45 spur, and I found that the motor started to cog a little bit, so I went back to an 18 tooth just to avoid any problems. The reason why I have the electrics out of the truck as well is because I've got different ones in here that I'm sort of playing around with at the moment. I may reveal that to you later on or not, depending on how they work out, but that's why they're out of the truck. There's nothing wrong with them. What is wrong with this particular guy is that it stripped gears. Now this is the stock steering servo, which is a Savox SW0231MG. This guy has plenty of torque, but unfortunately it is a little bit slow, and after about 10 battery packs I did end up stripping the gears. I don't know how many of this MG or how many metal gears are actually in here, but it was a bit unfortunate that the thing just stripped out. Now Team Magic were very kind, and they actually sent me out a replacement servo, but while I was waiting for that, I installed a different one in here, and I've been using that ever since, so probably I'll use the replacement servo somewhere else. Now that is pretty much all the negatives I have about the electric. Some of the positives: the stock remote that this truck comes with is actually pretty good. It did take me a little bit of time to adjust to it. I'm usually pretty good at adjusting to new remotes when I get a new RC, but this one, it took me a couple of battery packs to get used to it, and eventually I did warm up to it, and it's a decent remote. It has steering dual rates, the usual trims, no collapsible antennas, and of course it runs on 4 AA's. Pretty good grip in the hand as well, so don't mind the feel of this one, and it has a nice rubber wheel as opposed to the usual sort of foam wheels that you'll find on a lot of remotes. I think most people were pretty happy with the stock remote, unless you have something specific you want to do, but that is pretty much it for the electrics, and as I said, I gave this one a 3 out of 5. Okay, moving on to Drivetrain. Now for this category, I gave it a 3 out of 5 as well. I've got to say that for the most part, the diffs, bearings, drive shafts, outdrive cups, everything on this truck actually lasts quite a long time. I haven't had any issues with those, I haven't had any durability problems. Everything about that has been totally fine. I'm very happy with the performance of the bearings, outdrive cups, front rear diffs, all is good. However, there are 2 things that you will probably need to change right away as soon as you get this truck out of the box, and they are your center diff and your stock spur gear. Now the stock spur gear, unfortunately, is a very cheaply made spur gear. It's made like out of a cast aluminium of some sort. It's quite brittle, and you won't see it up on camera, I don't think. I may need to show you some close-ups, but this guy, yeah, completely destroyed, I think, on my first run, second run perhaps. It didn't last very long at all. After a few jumps, this pretty much disintegrated. Now, contributing to that is probably the biggest problem, which is the locked center diff. Now, this truck comes with this diff as stock, and there's basically no gearing in here. You can't turn this at all. It's basically just a big pinion with 2 outdrive cups on either side that go to your center drive shafts. The problem with this is that you have direct power going to your front and rear wheels, which some people might think it's a great idea, except when that works in reverse. So if you are jumping the truck and you have the wheels spinning and all of a sudden you land, that energy needs to go somewhere. It needs to bleed out somewhere. Essentially what tends to happen is you've got your front and rear wheels spinning, the truck lands, the energy needs to go somewhere. It travels back up your driveline into your locked center diff and straight into your spur, and that is your result, because there is no slipper clutch in here. If this had a slipper clutch and it still had this locked center diff, it probably wouldn't be so bad. But because there's no give here, there's nowhere for the power to go, the result tends to be this. Now, you can probably get away with it if you get a CNC machine spur gear. That might last you a little bit longer, but I still fear that the power needs to go somewhere, the energy needs to go somewhere when you land with the wheels spinning. And I'm not talking about so much landing with the truck under power, like with you actually pulling the throttle trigger, because that will happen as well. Just free spinning, that can create some problems. And I think that's something that Team Magic need to address. They really should include the gear diff that is available as an upgrade with this truck. I'm not a fan of this locked center diff at all. So that's why I gave this one a 3 out of 5. Of course, I have upgraded the truck to a gear diff, hence the reason why I have this one in my hand. The gear diff made a huge difference to the truck, makes it a lot more drivable as well, especially in cornering, and even when you land, you know, with the wheels spinning and so forth. There's always that little bit of slip in there. There's a bit of give, especially if you land with either the front or the rear first. The power has somewhere to go. But with a locked center diff, that's just not the case. And of course, I also have a CNC machine spur gear, which is a 45 tooth, as I mentioned earlier. So that's why I gave this one a 3 out of 5. So our next category is handling, and for this category, I actually gave the truck a 4 out of 5. I have to say, I've actually been really impressed with the handling characteristics of this truck, especially since I changed out that locked center diff to a gear diff. It makes the truck a lot more enjoyable to drive, and I have to say, I'm really very much impressed with it. There's really not a lot that I can knock on as far as the handling. You're talking about a monster truck that, as I said, has a high center of gravity, a fairly short wheelbase by comparison to some of the other monster trucks out there, such as my rival, which is a little bit longer. And the truck does extremely well. It corners very nicely, it jumps extremely well as well. It's fairly well balanced in the air, and I really don't have a lot to knock on. Probably the only thing that I can really pick on, to be totally honest with you, would be the tires. And it's not for the lack of grip, it's for the fact that they're actually really soft. These are kind of like a Summit tire. If you've ever had your hands on a Traxxas Summit tire, they're very much like that. So very soft foams, very soft rubber. So this is a bit of a problem when it comes to cornering, because the tire will tend to roll on itself, and you tend to sort of catch on the flat surface of the tire, which is the sidewall, and that creates a little bit of a problem as far as grip goes. But for the most part, these tires actually performed very, very nicely across a variety of terrains that I tested it on, and they're actually quite light. They don't weigh very much at all, which I guess, you know, it makes it a little bit tricky to do some backflips from time to time. But as far as the handling characteristics go, there's really not a lot to knock on. The shocks did a great job. The chassis seems to be very solid as well, and the truck is just well balanced overall. I prefer this truck over a couple of other monster trucks that I'll probably mention to you a bit later on, but very, very nice, and that's why I have to give this one a 4 out of 5. Now, our next category is durability, and for this one I also give it a 4 out of 5. Overall, I have to say I'm very impressed with the durability of the truck. It's taken a lot of punishment and a few brutal hits, and the truck is still here standing and ready for more action. So I'm very impressed with it, and that's why I gave it a 4 out of 5. Of course, there are a couple of things that you need to keep an eye on, and I'll mention those very shortly. But first and foremost, let's talk about some of the good stuff on here. Front bumper has got LEDs built in. I've landed quite a few times heavily on this front bumper, and it hasn't broken, and the LEDs are still working. So that's pretty good. Rear wheelie bar, very well braced, very strong. There's also ball bearings inside the rear wheel as well, and they haven't exploded, and nothing's gone wrong with this wheelie bar, so very impressed there. Ball bearings, drive shafts, outdrive cups, diffs, everything has lasted very nicely. Shocks haven't leaked, haven't broken any shock shafts, and I haven't blown any shock caps either. It's always nice to get aluminium shocks in a new RC, but to be honest with you, if they're done right and they're tuned correctly, plastic body shocks, I have nothing wrong with them. This is a prime example of a plastic body shock that is actually done right and does the job the way that it should be doing it. Have had no problems with these shocks whatsoever. Finally, the body, as you can see here, the body has these little black scuff plates on here. These obviously come standard with the body. Now, these not only add to the strength of the body, but also its longevity. The reason being is because when you land upside down, you're usually cringing because you've scratched up your brand new body on your brand new RC, or you've really done some damage to it. The good thing about having these skid plates on here is that they actually take the brunt of the force and they protect the body. So much so that I've had this truck now for about 9 months or so, and as you can see, the body is still in very good condition, although my skid plates here have obviously seen better days. Now, if I do get tired of looking at these all scuffed up, I can of course just replace these, and I've still got a very usable body, and I can just change out those skid plates, scuff plates. I mean, you can call them Henry, I don't really care, but that's what I'm calling them, and they do an excellent job. I really would like to see more RC companies kind of incorporate this into their bodies on some of the RCs, because I think that's actually a really good thing, because let's face it, buying a new body, painting it up, trimming it, masking it, doing all this, it's a lot of work, but if you have something that protects it like this, definitely adds some value to the RC, in the long run. Now, some of the things that you need to watch out for, obviously the spur gear is one of those things, mainly contributed to the locked center diff. The steering servo was another one that failed on me, but to be fair, that's a very slow steering servo, and most people would end up swapping that over anyway. A lot of people swap out steering servos on ready-to-run vehicles, regardless whether they fail or not, so it kind of cancels itself out. Although, yeah, I did sort of contribute to the durability factor of this truck. But there are a couple more serious things, one of them being the upper A-arms. Now, you can see here, these are the upper A-arms. They're both the same front and rear. I think in the front they go one way, in the rear you just flip them the other way. That's how they work. This one here came out of the front, and you can see it's got a bit of a crack in it. Now you can see here just how much I can actually flex this. This is a very soft plastic. Now, I broke this one when I was running the truck on 6S, trying to do some backflips and really giving it a hard time and being very brutal with it. I think some people may have even pointed it out in the comments that I was being quite harsh on the truck, because I was really wanting to see what would fail. I wasn't deliberately trying to hurt it, but I was really pushing it to see when it would actually fail. And it stood up to a lot of punishment. I only half broke an A-arm. Now, because these A-arms are actually quite soft, the rear A-arms, which are obviously the same, they tend to flex a little bit, and they actually twist with the lower A-arms. This happened to me a couple of times. I have to say that some people found that to be quite odd, obviously, and so did I, but they also found it to be quite a big deal. I kind of disagree. I don't see it as a huge big deal. It's no different to your body popping off, or losing a spoiler that you can screw back on or something like that, because the thing is, you can just twist them back. Now, of course, this is a design issue and it shouldn't be happening, but it doesn't cost you any money. You don't have to pull the truck apart. It doesn't end your day. It's just a matter of twisting it back. It's as simple as that. Now, of course, Team Magic have released some upgraded A-arms. They're a little bit thicker. They're also braced in the middle as well, so they got some bracing. They're a lot more squared off. And of course, since I replaced my rear A-arms like that, the upper ones only, the truck has been totally fine. There hasn't been any problems at all. So no more twisting. The BES that you see behind me, that truck already comes with these upgraded A-arms, so you're not going to have a problem with that one. But of course, I'll be doing a review for that later on, and talking about that one separately. Now, I did have another issue when I landed quite heavily on the side, and that was the pillow ball retainers are actually made out of plastic, and the pillow ball kind of pushed through the actual retainer, which is held on by a little screw. So normally with these pillow balls, I've seen them in a lot of other RCs, where the retainers actually screw into the actual hub, to the steering knuckle. But in this case, they sort of like slot into place, and then you just screw them in with a separate screw. Very different way of doing it. But what that means is that there's really nothing holding in the retainer other than that little screw, and with a big enough hit, you can actually get the pillow ball to push through the retainer, and that happened to me. So of course you can replace these with some aluminium ones that Team Magic offer, but that's really if you're being very rough with the truck, and yeah, if you do land on your side a number of times, that's when those things tend to happen. It only happened the one time. It hasn't happened with that truck, and it hasn't happened since. So maybe it was a bit of bad luck, but that's just something that I figured I'd mention as well. So that's it for durability. So let's move on to the next one. So moving on to maintenance, and this one I gave it a 3 out of 5, and there's a couple of reasons for that. First and foremost is the stock battery door that this comes with. So basically the chassis has this kind of like bathtub design where the batteries kind of sit in the chassis, and then you have this little door that goes over the top and it locks into place with a couple of body pins. I'm not a big fan of this door at all. It's very fiddly, it's kind of time consuming taking it off and putting it on, and it also limits the type of batteries that you can use because you can't use batteries that have the bullet connections coming out through the top of the battery. So what I ended up opting for was a design where you get 2 additional kind of like little posts that you need to put into the battery tray, and there's provisions there for the screws to bolt them into place and everything, and these come with these little battery straps that just slide over the top, and then you just put a couple of body pins, and it's a much simpler design, something that I've seen with a lot of other RCs in the past, and this works a lot better. There's also a third option which came standard on the BES that you see behind me, which is a Velcro strap, and that one is even easier than this one. So the little battery door, not a big fan of this one. I have seen, I think on Facebook or in one of the forums somewhere, that somebody cut out one of the little sections of the door so that they could have the batteries that have the bullets coming through the top coming through the door. So you do need to do a little bit of modifying to have that option if you use those types of batteries. Alternatively, you need to go for the strap, or if you really want to, you can go for the Velcro straps, which is also another option. The other thing that you got to take into account is if you need to service your front and rear diffs, there is quite a bit of digging you need to get to, or you need to do in order to get to them, I should say. The rear has the big wheelie bar, which is kind of forms part of the wing brace here, the wing mount. So quite a lot of digging to get to that rear diff. The front is even worse because you got the front bumper, you got the LED lights, the shock tower is mounted right above it. There's quite a bit of disassembly here to get to these front and rear diffs. So as far as the maintenance section goes, I'm going to deduct a few points for these reasons. Look, it makes the truck very strong. Both the front and rear is very strong. As I said, durability wise, very impressed. But there is a trade-off, and unfortunately maintenance, working on the truck does make it a little bit tricky if you need to get to some of these components. Aside from that, swapping out motors, ESCs, well actually the ESC does come with this like little snorkel scoop thing, which is kind of cool, helps keep the ESC cool and everything, but it does get in the way if you do swap out the ESC and you want to use something a little bit bigger or a different shape, or the wires come out a different way. Eventually you'll probably end up removing that scoop. Yeah, everything else is fine. Swapping A-arms, adjusting your shocks, there's no real issues there as far as just the tuning side of things, you know, just basic tuning. But if you do want to access the truck, the diffs in the truck, the front and rear diffs, and of course swapping out those batteries with this stock battery tray, for that reason I'm going to deduct a few points there. So just something to keep in mind, and that's why I gave it a 3 out of 5. Okay, so our second last category is part support, and for this one I gave it a 3 out of 5. Now this may vary depending on where you are in the world, because here in Australia there aren't a lot of places that I've found that sell this monster truck. So getting parts for this does mean that I have to find somewhere where they actually deal with Team Magic, and then of course they'll need to order the parts in because most likely they won't have them on the shelf because they don't sell the truck, and then that may take some time obviously to get the parts in stock. The other option is of course to go online, Google part numbers, and try to find where I can get the part that I need globally. And again, that will take some time for the part to arrive. So if you're here in Australia and you're trying to you're really keen on this truck, bear in mind that you need to make sure that you know where you can get your parts from. All that being said, I was at a local hobby shop recently and I noticed that they started stocking some of the drift cars. This is a good thing because that means that I have a hobby shop locally that can obviously order parts from Team Magic or from their distributor or whatever, and then I can get parts directly from them, saving me having to look up online. The other thing is that they also were thinking about stocking the monster trucks. This is a great thing because that means that obviously they may start stocking some of the more common parts that break, such as A-arms or spur gears and things like that. And they may even stock some upgrades as well. So obviously Team Magic are coming up a little bit and parts availability is becoming better and better here in this country. Now when you look at the global scale, obviously this truck is not just available here, it's available all over the world. for example, in America, there's also the Team Redcat version, which is the exact same truck, but instead of being orange and grey, it's kind of more of a dark gunmetal color, the body, and it has more of a red accents through it. So that means that over in the States, for example, you'll be more readily available to find parts for this particular truck, or for the Team Redcat for that matter. So this obviously helps the scoring overall for parts support. But you know, if I was to only score it based on the parts availability here in Australia, I'll probably only give it a 1, because I could only find some parts that are compatible with this truck, which were from the old version, which was the Trooper 2. And there was only 1 or 2 websites that I could find locally that would actually sell parts for those older trucks. So for this particular truck, I haven't been able to find specific parts for it, such as the body, for example. So, or even the wheels, I think the tires were the same on the old one, the rims were a little bit different. But that's just why I've given it a 3 out of 5. It's just that at the moment, I think it's still early stages for Team Magic. It's obvious that they are coming up in the world, they're becoming a little bit more popular. A lot of people are actually getting more and more of these RCs, you know, whether it be drift cars or monster trucks. And I think Team Magic are actually doing a very good job with these trucks as well, which means that, you know, as people start to spread the word a little bit, it's more likely that these trucks will become more popular, and of course more hobby shops and websites will actually start stocking parts for this particular brand. I'd love to see you know, places like Tower Hobbies, for example, actually pick up the brand and start selling these trucks as well as all the parts that they have, because that means that it would be so much easier for everybody around the world to be able to access parts for this truck. You know, same with the Team Redcat as well. I mean, obviously it's not a brand that's sold here in Australia as far as I'm aware, but you know, in certain parts of the world that makes parts availability a much higher score. But I have to look at it from my point of view, based on my experience, which is how I always judge my RCs, and I have to stick to a 3 out of 5. So closing out this review is value. Now for value, I gave this one a 3 out of 5. Now there's a couple of reasons why I gave it a 3 out of 5. One of them being that you have to buy a geared center diff when you first get the truck. I think that running that locked center diff will be detrimental to your driveline. I got away with just breaking a spur gear, but I'm pretty sure if I had upgraded only the spur gear to a CNC machine and that had lasted, I would probably see problems somewhere down the line with either my front and rear diffs. So I highly recommend you get yourself a geared center diff when you buy one of these trucks. Now the other reason why I only gave it a 3 out of 5 for value, and probably the more influential one, was because of part support. Now as I said, part support's a little bit hard to come by with this truck, especially where I am here in Australia. Your scoring may be different to mine, obviously, you know, depending on where you are in the world. But I have to score the truck accordingly to you know, where I am. I have of course taken some of that into account because I know that I have a global audience. That's why I'm sort of giving it a 3 out of 5, because if I was to score it only based on what I can get here in this country, it would probably only get a 1, maybe a 2 if I was being really generous, out of 5. So a 3 out of 5 for value I think is a very good score. And I have to say, you know, the price of this truck, I think the street value is somewhere around about the $460, $470, somewhere around there. That's actually not a bad price at all, and that's US dollars as well, by the way. You know, that's not a bad price when you consider that I think the Team Associated rival is about $430 or $450 US. So this is only a few bucks more than the rival, and I will say that this actually, I prefer this truck over the Team Associated rival as far as the durability aspect of it goes. The rival does have a very solid driveline, and it does of course come with a slipper clutch, but it does come with a plastic spur gear, which I melted, believe it or not, running that truck on 6S. So, you know, I also had issues with the spur gear on that one, but I had issues with shocks and shock towers and A-arms breaking, and I had a lot more durability problems with that truck than I did with this one. So, you know, that's why I kind of prefer this one a little bit more than the rival. And when you consider stock versus stock, take them both out of the box, this drives a lot better, I think, even with that locked center diff. Another truck that this would sort of go up against really well would be the Offner Hyper MT. And I have a little bit of a confession to make. I sold my Offner Hyper MT after driving this truck. There was a day where Paul and I went out to the BMX track. We took both of these trucks, and I think we were going to go out there to film an RC race wars from memory. And after about 2 minutes, neither one of us wanted to drive the Hyper. We both wanted to drive this truck. Unfortunately, at the time I only had the one, so we decided that probably wasn't going to be a very fair fight, and this was going to absolutely destroy the Offner. Hence the reason why I sold it, and I'm very happy to keep this particular truck. So, you know, even though the overall scoring for this is a 23 out of a potential 35, which brings the percentage to a 65.71%, which is about 6.5 out of 10. You know, that score does not tell the whole story on this truck, because it's not until you have remote in hand that you realize just how good this truck actually is, how well it performs, how durable it is, and how much work I think Team Magic have put into it, given that this is the third incarnation of this truck, and they've done significant improvements, or enough improvements to really make it worth my while, and the reason why I've decided to keep this one. So that's my review of the Team Magic E6III HX. Please be sure to check out the video description for more information on the truck. I'll have links in there to the previous videos. I'll also have a link in there to the Team Magic info page. There'll also be a bonus link in there for the Facebook group of the Team Magic and Team Redcat of these particular trucks. So if you want to know what some of the people are saying about these particular trucks, if you want to hear some other feedback other than just mine, check out that Facebook page. I'll have a link in the description, and you'll be able to get some more points of view from various different people there. There'll also be a link in there to my Facebook page, of course, if you want to go check that out. And that is it from me. Thank you all very much for watching, and I will speak to you next time.